Now, June's vote to leave the EU and the election of Donald Trump as America's next president will both go down in history as historic events in themselves, but also events that the polls and the pundits failed to predict. And in each case, the international financial markets were also expecting a different result. But after the initial shock of each vote, many were surprised to see the markets responding positively. And in the case of the UK, the economy showing itself more robust than most predicted. Labour market figures today show that unemployment has fallen again, this time to its lowest level for 11 years. Here's Joko with a look at the post-June 23rd numbers.
Yes, Andrew, on the night of the referendum, the markets closed at a record high for the year in expectation of a Remain vote and business as usual. But as it became clear the UK had voted to leave, the pound plummeted against both the euro and the dollar, reaching levels not seen in 30 years before recovering slightly. But other indicators have been more positive. The economy expanded by 0.5% in the quarter after the Brexit vote, performing better than the Bank of England had expected. Meanwhile, the employment rate is currently 74.5%, a record high. Consumer confidence has bounced back to pre-referendum levels. Yesterday's figures showing a slight fall in inflation to 0.9% means the weaker pound hasn't yet led to higher prices. And Google also announced that it would create 3,000 new jobs as its chief executive said Brexit has had no negative effects so far on the attractiveness of the UK. Like the Brexit vote, last week's election of Donald Trump also caught the markets by surprise. But by the afternoon, the panic had subsided and the markets closed up 1.4%. Since then, the S&P 500, an index of 500 different US stocks, has risen by 4%, in a sign that business thinks a Trump presidency could help their bottom lines. Since then, the pound has been the best performing major currency as attention shifts away from Brexit and onto what Trump's victory could mean for Europe and the euro. Andrew.
Thanks, Joko. Let's discuss this now with Andrew Gwynn and Gavin Barwell. Gavin Barwell, the Treasury warned last May about an immediate, I emphasise the word immediate, economic shock if we voted to leave on June the 23rd. What went wrong?
Well, it's a question of what's gone right, Andrew. The economic fundamentals, as Joe was just saying, have actually remained very positive.
That's
I think
the
it
point.
shows
So why did the Treasury get it wrong?
Well, clearly, there was an initial nervousness in my own area of housing. If you look at the data on viewings and etc. in the immediate few weeks afterwards, there was an effect. But actually, it's not been anything like.
You're grasping at straws, aren't you?
Well, I don't think we should be upset that things are actually looking very good. It's
no, but we were told how.
Let's
just look at what the Treasury said. This is in May 2016. It made a long-term forecast about what our incomes would be in 2030. We've got a long while to wait for that. But it also made a forecast on the short-term impact. And it said this: there is a clear central conclusion. A vote to leave would represent an immediate and profound shock to the economy. That shock would push the economy into recession and lead to an increase in unemployment of around 500,000. What bit of any of that is right?
Well, that clearly hasn't materialised, and we should be very happy that it hasn't materialised. These unemployment figures today are fantastic news. Unemployment is down at an 11-year low, so I think it shows you the underlying fundamentals.
Your government told us it was going to. You were on the Remain side. Your side told us unemployment would go up by 500,000 in the immediate short term. And in fact, unemployment in the labour force survey has continued to fall. Is there any bit of this Treasury forecast that is worth the paper it's written on?
Well, clearly those short-term predictions haven't come to pass. That's something that we should very much welcome. And as I said, though the news today from Google, the news from Nissan, the underlying data about unemployment are all very encouraging. I think they should give us reason to believe that we can make a success of the choice.
So the Treasury was wrong?
Made on this. Well, the short-term forecasts clearly haven't come to pass.
The Shadow Business Secretary, Clive Lewis, has welcomed the Google investment, 3,000 jobs, this new centre up by King's Cross. We've had the announcement by Nissan. This morning, the chairman of UBS, one of the biggest banks in the world, Swiss bank, has said they have no plans to go anywhere, even though there were murmurs that they might earlier. Given all this has happened, despite the generally negative approach to leave, Isn't it time we stopped talking our prospects down and took advantage of these investments?
Well, absolutely. And I think that, Andrew, is why we want to know more about what the government's stance is in terms of Brexit. Because, you know, it's clear there's been a referendum result. We respect that result, and nobody is going to stand in the way of Article 50 being triggered. But it's then what happens beyond that, and what we've seen in the leak this week, that the government has no plan for Brexit, and that's not a government leak.
Well, that's a Deloitte paper pitching for business,
and it's desperately trying to put together its strategy. Actually, I think we need to have clarity about the direction.
But can we just get it right? This was not a Cabinet Office leak.
OK, but
well, it's not okay.
The fact is they have no plan for Brexit, and that's something that we've known for some time.
But isn't it remarkable if you're right? And many people would agree with you. It's quite hard to divine the way the government is going. Mm-hmm. But given that adds to the uncertainty, we've had Google, Nissan, UBS, unemployment falling, the economy growing faster than the Eurozone, faster than Germany in the third quarter of this year, that despite that, things seem to, so far, big proviso, are going rather well.
And that's a very big proviso, because we don't know what the plan B is. And I think until we get to the stage where the government indicates its direction of travel, I think then businesses will then maybe have to reassess their own strategies. But at the moment, for them, it just looks as though it's business as usual.
So the Labour Remain side got it wrong too. You were far too gloomy.
Well, I mean, I still think that it's really important for British business and for British jobs that we have that certainty that we have in terms of what our relationship is going to be with the European single market.
But if we do this well with uncertainty, think what we do with certainty.
Well, we've not left the European Union yet.
No, that's of course true, but these forecasts I'm talking about were not predicated on that. They were predicated on the vote the way we did on June the 23rd. Angela Merkel signalled that she might be willing to compromise on freedom of movement. It's probably not as much as some of the British media is making out, but it's a change in position to it. And immigration, of course, and how we deal with that is really important going forward, and particularly for certainty. Who's the Labour, who's the shadow immigration spokesperson?
Well, of course, we've got a shadow Home Secretary, so Diane Abbott speaks on these issues in the House of Commons.
But who's the shadow immigration spokesperson?
Well, at this moment in time, it's Diane Abbott as the shadow Home Secretary.
So you haven't got one?
Well, I'm not aware that there's a specific shadow minister been appointed yet, but at this moment in time...
Do you know how important it is?
Well, absolutely, and Diane Abbott
and you haven't appointed one?
Well, Diane Abbott has the top job in the Home Office team. So.
OK, but you haven't actually... She hasn't got an immigration spokesperson in her team. Yeah,
she's got shadow ministers in her team.
Despite the need for some certainty on this.
Well,
there you go. Boris Johnson says that we're likely to leave the customs union, and there's talk of us leaving the single market too. What's the difference between the two?
Well, the customs union obviously controls the tariffs that you have a sort of common tariff structure, essentially, an external tariff structure, whereas the single market is a bespoke arrangement within the EU about trade within the EU.
So we are going to leave the customs union?
No, that's not been set out as government policy. The Prime Minister, I think, has been very clear. I think there were two clear messages from the referendum, whichever side we were on, which is that there's a real concern that we get back control of our borders and that we make decisions about our own laws in this country, and then subject to that, we want to get the best possible access to trade within the single market.
So let me just get it right. Is it government policy to leave the customs union or not to leave the customs union?
So the government is not going to set out the detailed negotiation.
That's not a detail, that's a fundamental principle.
No, so we've been very clear that we're trying to get the best possible terms of access for British business, and the exact mechanism by which we do that will be settled.
You accept it's not a detail, it's a principle?
No, of course these matters.
What's Labour's position on the customs union?
Well, we've made it very clear that what we want is to have access to the European single market.
But I didn't ask about the single market.
But the customs union is tied into that. What we want to know is precisely the point that you're making. It isn't the absolute detail of what the government's negotiation strategy is going to be. We want to know the kind of headline.
I understand that, and that's why I asked him the question. But he didn't answer it. No. So I'm asking you, what is your position on the customs union?
Well, I think that absolutely we want to be part of the free trade arrangements across Europe.
I'm sorry, the customs union that's the single market.
And the customs union
it sets up the external tariffs.
It does.
For things coming into it.
And
should we be a member or not?
Well, my own personal feeling is yes, we should, because it's an important part of the operation of the single market that you have that single tariff.
But Norway's in the single market. It's not in the customs union.
No, and there are countries that are in the customs union that aren't in the single market as well. But I think that actually, for the best of trade and job opportunities for Britain, that we need to have a very firm line. But you can't have the British Foreign Secretary briefing the Czech media on this and then Gavin to say this isn't government policy. That's not how cabinet government works.
Maybe not. But I'm trying to stick on the issues rather than process here. Do you accept that if we're in the customs union, it follows as night follows day, that we then cannot do our own free trade deals?
No, I don't believe that, because there are countries within the customs union that have got free trade deals outside.
That have made them since they joined the customs union?
I believe so,
Who?
yes. Switzerland.
Switzerland
Yes.
has a special arrangement.
It does.
With the single market. Yes. It is not in the customs union.
But it's really important that
it's not in the customs union.
It has a relationship with the customs union.
No, it has a relationship with the single market.
But it's really important here, Andrew,
to get things right.
Well, OK, but it's really important, Andrew, that what we do is we get in place the best deal for Britain. And I don't know what the government...
I understand, but now you're just back on rhetoric. Do you accept that we cannot remain in the customs union and do free trade agreements?
By definition, a customs union is agreement to have common external tariffs.
So we're coming out?
No.
Otherwise, what's the point of Liam Fox?
So I'm not going to get into the business of speculating on it. The government has been very clear that what it's trying to do is negotiate the best possible deal for British business. And it's not, I understand, Andrew, it's your job to ask these questions.
Well, they're quite fundamental.
They are important questions, but it's not actually in the public interest. The government needs the freedom
not in
to
the
go
public
in and
interest
negotiate.
for you to make up your mind on a matter of principle.
The government needs the freedom to go into that room and negotiate for what is the best deal we can get for British business.
OK.
Both in terms of trading within Europe, but also trading, as you say, with other countries.
But I mean, having just come back from the States this morning, there's huge talk about doing free trade deals, bilateral ones again. If we stay in the customs union, you can't do that. So this country, this government will need to make up its mind which way it's going to go.
Don't hold your breath.
I will not. I've learned the hard way not to do that.